Obviously part of a series where I focus on Academy Award Best Picture nominees. I've done such years in the past, such as 2000 to 2009. This time around, you clicked on the video so you know it. This time around, I'm focusing on the Academy Award Best Picture nominees of 2010 and ranking them from worst to best. Now, similar to 2009, there were up to 10 Best Picture nominees that were allowed, and they actually filled in all 10. So I'll be ranking them from 10 being the worst to 1 being the best, in my personal opinion. And that being said, I also look forward to hearing your guys' thoughts on your ranking down below of the 2010 Best Picture nominees. And guys, enough exposition. Let's get started. So kicking things off, we have number 10, which is the Best Picture winner of 2010, which is The King's Speech. I loved this film when I first saw it many years ago, and then I rewatched it at the beginning of the pandemic, and I found it to be very middle of the road. It's very well acted, it's very well shot, everything is very competent. I just think that personally the rewatchability value is very low on this film, and also it just feels very dry upon rewatch. It has that great scene of when, all of a sudden the king starts cursing and everything. That scene is good. Everything else, it's just It feels very Oscar bait now, and I usually don't feel that way. I'm the same person that defends Shakespeare in Love, like saying it's good, and I know that's a controversial take these days, but I just personally wasn't able to get behind The King's Speech a second viewing. I respect it to an extent, but it winning Best Picture, no. That's why I have it as my number 10. Again, I understand and respect if some people have this higher, but for me, no. It's my number 10. Next up, my number 9 is Winter's Bone. This is a good film. Jennifer Lawrence does a great job. This is the film that, for many, they found her and she won, well, not won, she was nominated for Best Actress, and well-deserved. It's a really good film in terms of it delivering like a very character-driven piece of characters that we often don't really see on the big screen, so I liked that. But the thing is, I've never really had the urge to revisit the film, despite me respecting it and really liking, again, the acting and the attention to detail. But yeah, for me, it's my number 9. Next up, my number 8 is The Fighter. This is a David O. Russell film. It has a great cast: Christian Bale, Mark Wahlberg, Amy Adams, Melissa Leo. Really good cast. They all do a good job. It's a solid film. It slightly rises above the cliches of the genre. There's not really much for me to say. I like it a bit more than Winter's Bone, but that's mostly because I feel as though the dialogue, the drama between all these characters and the family members, I think it's very enticing. But similar to Winter's Bone, I've only seen it one time, and I haven't really had the urge to revisit it. Maybe it will go higher on the list or down further. I don't know if I do decide to rewatch it at some point, but I still respect it. I like it. It's a rock solid film. That's why it's my number 8. Next up, my number 7. We were starting off with the films that I own. My number 7 is 127 Hours. This is a short, lean, mean, well-done film. Danny Boyle does a really good job directing this film. James Franco's lead performance, say what you will as a person. I get it. But as an actor, what a performance. What a performance. Visual style is very clear. The scene at the end, y'all know what I'm talking about if you've seen the film. That scene, it's very hard to watch, which is fitting. But my goodness, it's very gut-wrenching. It's a gut-wrenching scene. It's very well done. It's a good film. I like it. I don't love it, but I like it. It's a good film. It's very well done, and definitely a film that needs to be seen at least one time. But yeah, that is my number 7. Next up, number 6 is The Kids Are All Right. This film, the first time I saw it, I thought it was solid, but I did revisit it because I couldn't help but think about it more and more, and I ended up not blind buying it, but buying it on Blu-ray at the beginning of the pandemic. And I liked it. The second time is when it really kind of clicked for me. And I said to myself, yeah, this is a good film. Great performances. I think it's a very important film dealing with very timely themes and messages. And I also think that the story itself is very intriguing. It's a indie film, so for some people, if you're not really a fan of like dialogue-driven films, this might not be for you. But for everyone else, I would definitely recommend this film. It is quite good. And yeah, that's why it's my number 6. Next up, my number 5. This is a film that for a long time would have been my number 2 or my number 3. But my number 5 is Inception. I like this film. I think it is good. I've seen it many times, and for the longest time, I deemed it a masterpiece. But at the beginning of the pandemic, I rewatched it, and I liked it. But at the same time, the scenes with exposition do kind of stick out like a sore thumb. That being said, when the film isn't focusing on the heavy exposition, it is quite good. I think the action scenes are incredible. I think the cinematography is outstanding. Hans Zimmer's score, the bam, bam. It's good. It's really quite good. I love the attention to detail of the practical effects. The lead performance by DiCaprio was great, and everyone else is also great. I also love the metaphor of how all these characters kind of represent different clogs in terms of the people behind making movies. Like each person represents that. Look at DiCaprio; he's looked at as like the director. I mean, frankly, if you look at DiCaprio, he looks like Christopher Nolan. So I'm just saying, go down the rabbit hole, go on the internet, look it up. It's really interesting to see how each character represents an aspect of filmmaking. And if you look at it that way, it makes the film even better. But yeah, this is a good film. I like it, but I just don't love it the way that I used to. But again, it's a good film, and that's why it's my number 5. Next up, my number 4, we have Toy Story 3. It's a masterpiece. It's an incredible film. I find myself loving it more and more each time. The ending is perfect. Don't get me wrong, I love Toy Story 4. But I do think that Toy Story 3, if they had ended there, I mean, it is a perfect ending. It is a perfect ending to the characters. It's a great film. It really is. I don't really have much more to say to it. If you haven't seen it by now, you're really doing yourself a disservice. Watch Toy Story 3. It's a great film. And that's why it's my number 4. Next up, my number 3, we have Black Swan. Darren Aronofsky film. If you're new to my channel, just know I am a huge fan of Darren Aronofsky. Every one of his films I actually really quite like to love, and Black Swan is definitely up there. I think Black Swan is an incredible film in terms of just that concept of what is real and what isn't. I love it when a filmmaker is able to use that and use it for a character study, in particular Natalie Portman giving a tour de force performance. I think that everything in this film works. It's got exceptional cinematography, the score, how it utilizes classical music to make it feel like its own. Costume design is great. The ending is very ambiguous, which some people might not like, and some people might not also like the weird aspect, but for those reasons, I like it. I love the ambiguous ending. I love the weirdness of this film, how it doesn't feel very traditional. It feels very unique in its approach, and I think that a lot of that has to do with, again, Darren Aronofsky and Natalie Portman. They worked really well together. Hopefully they work together in the future, but I love Black Swan, and that is why it is my number 3. Next up, my number 2, we have, we'll see some great. My number 2 is True Grit. I love this film. To be quite frank with many of you, I grew up watching the original, and when I saw this film in theaters, which I saw it, I think it was 3 or 4 times in theaters. After I saw it the first time in theaters, I said to myself, yeah, I'm not going to revisit the original. And I still have yet to rewatch the original because this film is that great of a remake. Not only is it a great remake, but it is actually very faithful to the book, which I know I don't really read that many books, but I actually did read True Grit. And it's very faithful. But even when it's not faithful and it does something different from the book, it makes it its own. It's got that Coen Brothers twist to it. And I think that, honestly, the changes that were done made the film adaptation even better. It's very violent. It's very gritty. It's PG-13, but it doesn't feel like it because, again, all of these characters are going through all this stuff that honestly feels kind of like, boundary pushing, if you will, for the rating, which is really interesting. I mean, there's a lot of scenes where you're like, oh my goodness, like in particular the cabin scene. You guys know what I'm talking about if you've seen the film. But I know some people that say, hey, this is like a traditional Western, but I don't feel it. I really don't. I grew up watching Westerns, like older Westerns, and it really doesn't. It feels like it's its own thing, and it's also very well acted. Jeff Bridges gives, I would argue, maybe his best performance. I know his most iconic is the dude, like playing the dude in The Big Lebowski, but this might be his best. Haley Steinfeld is outstanding. Still her best performance to date. Matt Damon's great. Barry Pepper playing Dead Pepper is great. Josh Brolin. Everyone does a great job. It's got an ending that is so good, and I love True Grit. I love it, and that is why it's my number 2. That being said, there was a film that was positioned against The King's Speech, and I'll never forget when this film came out. I didn't want to see it, but then I saw it, and I loved it, and each time I watched it, it's gone higher and higher up my list in terms of my favorite films, and now it is in my top 25. That's right. My number 1 is The Social Network. I love this film. It's a masterpiece. It's a masterpiece. It should have won Best Picture. It should have. And it had a chance to. The fact, in my eyes, it is still the biggest upset that this somehow lost Best Picture to The King's Speech. Yeah. It's a masterpiece. If you haven't seen The Social Network, I would highly urge you to check it out. It's a great film. in typical Fincher fashion, it is a film that has a lot of visual effects, but you wouldn't be able to tell because they are so seamless. That's what I love about him as a director. I think he should have won Best Director. I think that this film, it did win a couple Oscars, which well deserved for sure. But I do feel like it should have won Picture and Director. It's a great film. I would highly urge you to watch if you haven't for some reason. It is also a film that it's a biopic, but it definitely feels very unique in its approach. But yeah, Social Network, it's my number one. One of my favorite films of all time. But yeah, guys, those are my ranking for the 2010 Oscar Best Picture nominees. Let me know your ranking down below. And guys, as always, thank you very much for watching. If you haven't done so already, don't forget the subscription, notification bell, follow me down on Letterboxd, and I will catch you guys later.